Death lingers on the winds. Elder cataclysms have returned to Arcadia. Darkness lurks in places once formed of light. The fell mist draped across the eastern mountains pierces the heart of men and elves alike. Welcome back, travelers. I told you the history of the dwarves in the western mountains. Now let's travel far across Arcadia to the east, deep in the lands of Akisa, the soaring wave. Elves have controlled these waters and forests for millennia, long before men dared to create their vessels of travel and war. The mountains now sink into a veil of dread and weary. Tales of dragons and monsters have grown in recent months. Even the years of the Elven King have been reached. But our tale is not of a king. Let's go somewhere a bit more simple and quaint. A small settlement of elves in the eastern mountains, overlooking the Azure Sea. The fog has grown so thick now. Traveling between settlements is saved for the veterans and experienced merchants. But here in this small settlement, there is no shortage of courage. It takes great effort to live away from the grand cities in Akisa. A small boy runs across the beach at the bottom of the mountains, laughing and playing. He collects seashells to bring home to his mother. White hair and pointed ears, his icy blue eyes were fixed on a crab waddling across the sand. On the beach he spots something. A beached animal, perhaps? Curious and in wonder, the boy ran over to help it. He had quite the fondness for animals, after all, especially those near the sea. He was far from the settlement now, but the beaches here were so calm. But what he found was not as calming as the waters. It was a man in shining silver armor. He clutched a sword in his hand. Blood pooled around him from his wounds. They appeared to be claw marks. The symbol on his armor, it was not one the boy recognized. He had seen warriors from Ascendiae and Adelgis, but this was the marking of a sun, somewhere he could not recall. Coughing up water, the man was alive. Pulling with all his might, the boy tried to drag him from the waves. He was so heavy with all that armor, even as battered as it was. But the boy managed to at least pull him from the waters by a couple of meters. They're stirring, angry and old. Coughing up, the man uttered confusing words. The boy recognized them in the common tongue. Elves were taught many languages from a young age. "Felix, Mother's angry you've been gone too long." It was his sister, Estelle, calling to him from the tree line. She spotted them on the beach, and with a gasp, she began to call for help. The man did not recall much of this incident. He only remembered the young boy and the bright light around him. Was he an angel? A guardian sent to deliver him to the shining plains? When he awoke, the man was covered in cloth soft like silk. His broken and beaten armor laid against the walls of this small wooden house he now lay in. It was quaint, but well constructed. There was a warmth here, coming from a crystal in the center of the room. Magic. He could feel it deep in the ground here. Clutching his side, it was wrapped in bandages. Whoever had gathered him up took quite good care of his wounds. "The healer used some magic and herbs on you. You should be fine in a couple of days." It was the young boy. He was perhaps no older than 10 or 11 years. This was the young boy that pulled him from the water. Much after that escaped him, but he did recall this act of heroism. "Thank you for saving me, but where am I?" "You're welcome, mister. You're in the healer's home here in the eastern mountains." Spotting the boy's elven ears, he fell into silence as he heard the mention of the eastern mountains. "So, I'm in Akisa." His heart fell into his stomach. No man had entered the borders of Akisa in almost 500 years, not since the last Great War. But these elves, no. These people had helped him. Why? Entering the room was a young woman. skin pale as the moon and sparkling emerald eyes. She wore simple silk cloth, with a small green jewel on her wrist. This must be the healer. An aura emanated from her that reminded him of the paladins back home. "Ah, you're up. I'm glad," she said. "You must have quite the will to be awake so soon. Here, drink some water and rest." She lifted a small cup towards his mouth. His wounds ached, but he managed to drink some. "What's that symbol on your armor, mister? And what's your name? Where'd you come from?" "So many questions, young one. Give him some time." "No, it's okay. I'm grateful for your help." He coughed a bit. "I'm Leon. The symbol on my armor is the Northern Star, the grandson of the Kingdom Suna." He went on to explain he was a captain of the guard in Liot, a city to the north, sent on a reconnaissance mission to figure out why local farmers' cattle were being torn to pieces night after night. There he encountered a beast near the north of the Eastern Sea, and there his men were taken out, one by one. He tackled the beast into the waters, plunging into the depths, and then he awoke in Akisa, far from home. The man drifted quite a ways down the water, but he survived, and for that he was grateful. Over the next few days, he and the boy began to form a bond. Felix was kind-hearted, but adventurous in spirit. Asking many questions of the Knights of Suna, Leon told him. And over the next few days, he managed to regain some of his strength. Helping out around the settlement, he could not help but note how kind the elves were. Technically, he was outlawed from even being in this place, yet they showed him such kindness. He was well taken care of. Suna was a beautiful kingdom, grand and full of light, but even in the brightest places, darkness lurked. The light he felt here was incomparable to anywhere else he had ventured. This was a place of true joy. Then one night, the mists fell across the mountains. The people here had become accustomed to this occurrence, but something felt off to Leon. This mist reminded him of the beast he had faced that sent him here. His mind wandered back to the farmlands, where the mists lingered across the fields, there where his men had perished. Darkness was creeping into the roots of Arcadia. Leon could tell. But where were the rangers of Akisa? Had they forsaken these lands? To his knowledge, Akisa was the last grand elven kingdom. The people here seemed happy, but something was wrong. He learned from those in the settlement that the rangers had been sent there, but they never returned. Villagers who ventured too far beyond the wooden walls of the settlement often never returned. Guards and warriors were sent with any traders to ensure a safe return, but that was only so effective. Leon felt an obligation to the people here. They had saved his life after all, and if there was a connection to what he had faced back home, then it was his duty to pursue it. Grabbing his sword, Leon took a deep breath. This was no ordinary weapon. It had been passed down through his family for generations. They called it the Lichtbringer, or Lightbringer. He was no mana user or paladin, but his pride was in this blade and the power within it. His armor had been shattered, other than that which he adorned on his arms. Sliding the sparkling plate on, Felix came to help him, tightening the plates and throwing the golden cape across his shoulders. Felix began to tear up. "What's wrong, little one?" Leon asked. The young one went on to explain that the last time he helped someone put on their armor like this was when his father left the settlement for the last time. He had perished in battle in the forests. "Are you going to die too?" he asked. Leon's heart sank. Leaning down to place a hand on the boy's shoulder, "I'll be back, I promise," he said. The healer tried to dissuade him from going, as did the boy's mother, but Leon was determined. This was his job. Back home he protected his own city, and here was no different. The people here deserved to live in peace. Clutching his blade, Leon ventured into the forests and into the mist. The beast left markings on the trees. This was his territory. He was a skilled tracker, and he knew what to look for. He spent hours looking for the creature, following its footsteps, its markings, But the mist had grown far too thick. He was beginning to lose his sense of direction and his sense of self. But soon he found a clearing. Rustling in the trees, every hair on his body stood up. There it was, the creature that had sent him here. Its body was amphibian, smooth and slimy. Claws jutted out from its overgrown arms as mist and fog emerged from perforated holes on its body. This was a swamp creature, one that had not been seen in Arcadia for centuries. He remembered the tales of the mist dwellers. They attacked caravans under a veil of fog near the swamplands. They were also rumored to carry the spirits of those they killed with them, spawning the creation of the dread forest near eastern Arcadia. But Leon did not have time to dwell on the legends. He had to move quickly. Engaging the beast, he managed to land several blows, but the creature was the size of a small hut. It was not fazed. Slamming him against the tree, the wind was knocked out of his body. Rolling away from the claws and fangs of this hideous beast, he landed blow after blow. Blood was trickling down his forehead now as he gasped for air. The beast was closing in on him. Was this to be his end? An arrow whirled through the air, piercing the side of the mist dweller. Screeching in pain, it turned to a flurry of arrows. Scurrying up into a tree, a single elf emerged from the tree line. She wore green and brown leather armor, wielding a bronze bow. This was a ranger of Arcadia. She was alone, though, covered in scratches and wounds. Firing arrow after arrow, both had lost sight of their target. Leaping from the trees, the beast pinned the ranger down. Jamming an arrow into its neck, she screamed in pain as the creature continued to press his body down on her, oozing saliva dripping onto her armor. Leon mustered all of his strength. Rising to his feet, he picked up Lichtbringer. The blade began to shimmer. This was the might of Suna, the strength of his people. He brought the blade down upon the head of the beast and sent it into oblivion. Mist and fog began to spew out wildly as blood filled its orifices that previously spewed what was once its protection. Falling to his knees, he was helped up by the elven woman. She thanked him for his help. Her and her men had been hunting the creature for days now, but to no avail, and only she remained. Asking her name, she replied simply, Illyrian, a captain of the Rangers. In many ways, this woman was his counterpart. It was both of their jobs to protect the people and their lands, and he could not help but find irony and solace in this fact. But Leon had a promise to keep, returning home to say one last goodbye to Felix. The monster will plague you no more. No longer shall mists blot out the wonderful sun here in Arcadia. They thanked him for his help, but the young boy began to cry. He knew his hero would soon leave and return to his home. Do not cry, young one. I may be gone for now, but one day I will return for you. Here, take this. Ripping the cape from his back with the emblem of Suna on it, he gave it to the young boy. Felix wiped his tears and smiled. In one last act of kindness, the elves gifted him a horse to ride home on. He had quite the journey to complete after all. Saying his farewell, he rode into the distance, but not before getting one last look at the beautiful forest here, and the beach not so far off. He'd never forget the help he was given by the people here, and perhaps that would go a long way towards the future of men and elves. But only time will tell. Hey guys, thanks again for listening in. I hope you did enjoy. Please check out our most recent episode in Tales of Arcadia, The Crimson Queen, and also check out our other series, History of Arcadia, with our most recent episode, The Giant's Crossing. If you'd like to check out some of our other work, you can find the link to my book down in the description below, titled Wings of Heaven, and you can check us out on Facebook at Poems and Embers to check our weekly updates and our daily updates on all the things that we're doing around here. Please like, comment, subscribe. You guys know what to do. Thanks again, and good luck on your own adventures.